evening yet again, Mr. Webb. Thanks again for joining us. Um, Obviously, with the COVID, this pandemic, things are going to look a lot different when football resumes, especially for you in the U.S. and the MLS. Um, you got some football returned, but obviously more restrictions will be put on. What are some of those restrictions that they're talking about, and how can the referees, or how will the referees adjust to this new way of living each and every day?
Yeah, well, hi, Earl. Good evening, and thanks for the invitation to join you guys again. I enjoyed being with you a month ago. I don't know how many people were on the call back on the 1st of Feb that's on the call again today. I'm sure there's quite a few. So thanks for the re-invitation. It's great to be in your company yet again this evening. I always enjoy speaking about something that I'm really passionate about, not just the game of soccer, football, but also our specific part in that, which is officiating. So great to be in your company again. I'm calling in from New Jersey, very close to New York, where I'm based, but it is actually in New Jersey. The property prices are a lot cheaper here than they are in New York, so that's why I'm here. And it's been such a weird few months, hasn't it, for all of us. I don't think anything's affected the entire world in the way that COVID has, probably since going right back to sort of like World War II. I mean, it's such a bizarre time, and it's still having that impact. When I think back to what happened with Major League Soccer in 2020, and as you know, I'm responsible for the officiating program in MLS. I head up this organisation, professional referee organisation. We do assign to the NWSL and USL as well, the Women's League and the Second Division Men, but they're mainly used as training and development grounds for MLS. And we actually got started last year. Our season in the US, as you'll know, runs from kind of March through to November or December. And we got started. We had 2 rounds. We got all the preparation done, the fitness testing. We'd done the pre-season camp. We'd done the pre-season meetings. We got everybody in good shape physically and technically ready for that big kickoff on the 29th of Feb. And we only got 2 weeks in, and then suddenly, bam, we had to shut down. And we were closed down for something like 16 weeks until we managed to get something going again at a tournament in Orlando. We realized that the game that we were going to come back to was going to look a bit different to the game that we left in March. The biggest difference, of course, being no fans in the stadium. And very few of us had officiated competitive games without fans in the stadium. Okay, most of us had done some sort of games without fans. We'd done scrimmage games, we'd done friendly games, but we'd not done games where something really mattered in an empty stadium. And we knew that was going to present some different challenges. We knew, for example, that you'd be able to hear the players much more clearly than you could do normally, the comments that they were making. We also, on the reverse of that, we knew that the players and the coaches would be able to hear us much more clearly than we would be normally in regular games. We also realised that the visual and audio cues that you pick up from in a game would be slightly different. Particularly the audio cues would be more obvious. So a tackle that goes in that sounds bad can change your view about the intensity and level of the challenge. And we tried to prepare for those changes. So if you remember, when we were all closed down around the world, some leagues started before others. The first competitive league in the world to restart was the Bundesliga. And the first game was Schalke against Borussia Dortmund. It was refereed by a German FIFA referee called Dennis Eiterken. And Dennis joined one of our camps online, and he spoke to our referees about the differences that he found. The differences because of COVID, such as, not shaking hands with players, not picking players up off the floor, not getting too close to players when you're interacting unless you have no choice but to be there. And also be mindful about the communication. We also spoke to Anthony Taylor. Anthony's a Premier League referee. He'd refereed Paris Saint-Germain behind closed doors just at the start of the pandemic. Before the shutdown, they stopped fans coming in, but they still kept the stadium open. And that was against, I think that was against Dortmund as well. And he spoke about the same things, their experiences, because we wanted to give our referees the benefit of their experience. And it it kind of worked okay. I mean, it gave us a bit of an advantage when we restarted. It was in a tournament down in Orlando, so it was a bit of a different feel anyway. We also knew, for example, that the players would be coming back less physically attuned to the game. So we knew the game might be slower. We knew it might be more error prone. So we said to the guys, look, don't always expect the passers to find their recipient. Expect the unexpected. Be ready to adjust to a very quick breakdown of play. And we restarted down in Orlando in really good shape. Our guys did a pretty good job at this tournament, and then we got back out into the States in September. The issue here, of course, in a country the size of the US, is that we've got such a big range of regulations. Down in Orlando, which seems pretty relaxed, but up here in New York, it's all shut down still. So therefore, we've got fans in some stadiums and not in others. But we start on the 17th of April, in about 7 weeks' time in MLS, and we're going to hopefully be just as ready as we were at the start of last season. And we hope that some of the stadiums will open back up. One of the things that we had to deal with, of course, and still do, is not being able to get together to meet. So all of our meetings are being done online. And as much as I love looking at you guys on this screen, there's 15 people on this call, including me, so 14 others. I would love to be in the room with you. I'd love to be feeling the energy of you guys. I'd love to see the reaction to what I'm saying in your eyes and your expressions and the way that your body language tells me whether you're listening, whether you're interested, whether I'm boring the pants off you, because that's what good conversation's all about. That's how I know that I'm hitting the spot when I'm speaking to you in the same room. And unfortunately, we have to make do with this. And also sharing video is not easy because video doesn't stream very well. And most of our training comes down to video. It comes down to how you can show examples on video in a really smooth and efficient way. So we've tried different things, but nothing's perfect. But we're still trying to get through that. We've also got somehow to get people back into the flow and the rhythm of VAR, because we use VAR in MLS, as you know, and we need to get people who haven't sat behind a VAR hardware or haven't sat in a booth for what will be 4 months in effect. We don't want them to go straight in. Their first time back in a VAR booth is on their first game again, because it's going to take time to get back into it. But how are we going to get people around the country back into training? So we're having to think about ways that we can, do things at home, but also regionalize some of the training with some VAR systems as well. And then also the physical training, understanding that, the facilities are opening back up again now, but not all over the country. So we've had to regionalize fitness testing. We've had to send people specific fitness training sessions that they can do at home. So even though we're a year into this pandemic, we're still feeling a big impact, and that will continue, we think, until next year. I don't know what it's like on the island. I don't know how you guys are coping, if it's restrictive or if it's a bit more relaxed. I don't know if fans are in your stadiums again or not. But for those of you who refereed, without fans, it's a different feeling for sure. It's a different atmosphere, and you've got to keep focused. You've got to keep, that's what I found in my career, Earl, is that those emotions that you get when you're refereeing a game, the emotions of nervousness, the emotions of adrenaline, quite often that comes from the atmosphere of the game, and it happens without you realizing it. So I'd be doing a big game, a Champions League game, a Premier League game. I'd be stood in the tunnel before the game. I could hear the crowd, I could smell it, and that would make me sharp. It would make me better without trying to be better. Even though I was nervous, I was always nervous. I'd have butterflies in my tummy, but those butterflies, those nerves in me made me perform better. I think it heightens our awareness and our cognitive skills, and you can't manufacture that artificially. So it's a challenge to be at the very top of your game when there's no atmosphere, when there's not as much adrenaline flowing around your body. All you can do is do the basics right, and that means being fit, physically fit and ready for the game. It means knowing the laws of the game. It means understanding the team responsibilities when you're working with assistant referees and a fourth official. It means always staying focused throughout the 90 minutes, not letting your mind drift away. And again, doing the basics. We can talk about, before we got onto this call, we talked a little bit about what we saw at the Premier League this week. We can talk about doing the basics right, because they are the things that fundamentally are the foundations of a good refereeing performance, doing the basics right. And if you don't, then you see some of the problems that can happen, and we saw that at the weekend. So, yeah, COVID continues to be a problem, but we'll keep working through it, and we'll keep the guys as motivated as they can be. They feel lucky that they're out there doing a job when a lot of people can't work properly at the moment. And we hopefully will see the back of it, but it won't be, we think, until probably next year.
Yeah. You talked about the incidents that happened over the weekend, but how often do you and your team evaluate the VAR decisions from around the world, so it's like a learning tool when you have to teach it to someone else?
We always keep an eye on what's happening everywhere, because we can always benefit from best practice elsewhere, and we can learn from people doing the same job as we do in different places. We can learn from errors that are made as well. Going right back to 2017, in fact, it's 4 years today, the 1st of March, that I came over here to lead the VAR project in MLS, and then I took over as general manager the following year. But when I came over, we were part of a group of federations from around the world who shared a lot of information with each other in terms of how we thought VAR should be used, what it should look like, how our training methods were working. Even tomorrow, I've got a call tomorrow afternoon with the KNVB from the Netherlands and the Australian Federation. We've got a working group about communication, about how we can share with the stadium audience, when we get one back after COVID, what's happening with VAR. One of the criticisms we saw at the weekend is that nobody knows what's going off. So we're going to talk about how we can best share that process, whether it's a bit like NFL or NHL, the hockey or the football, where the referee speaks to the crowd, speaks to the stadium over a loudspeaker, or whether it's broadcasting the conversation between the referee and the VAR. So one of the things when we got back down to Orlando for MLS's back, one of the things we did is we allowed the broadcaster, be it ESPN or Fox Sports, we allowed them to play or listen in on the audio and play it to their viewers back home. We controlled it. We opened it and closed it again, so it wasn't open all the time. And we made sure that the officials were fully aware that their conversations were going to be broadcast. It was something which MLS really wanted to happen. They wanted to make this tournament down in Orlando, which was going to be without any fans, in down at Disney facility, without a stadium. They wanted to make it as different as possible, as sort of like enhanced as possible from the broadcast point of view, because all the fans were watching on TV. So they said, look, we really want you to do this. So we did it, and it was seen around the world as quite a big success that people could listen. But we had a conversation after that with FIFA. They said, look, can you slow down, because as it stands yet, we've not sanctioned the use of broadcasting of the audio. So we said, okay, fine. We said, it was quite unique circumstances. So I think part of the job that we're going to do with the Dutch and the Australians is to put a proposal to FIFA to say, look, for those federations where we think this is going to be a benefit, can we broadcast the audio? Can we allow the fans to listen to it? In some places, it would be really beneficial. We think it would be here. I'm not sure it would be a great advantage it would be an advantage in England, but I think that, we all know on this call, some of the conversations we have between the players and officials, and there's nothing wrong with the conversations, but they wouldn't really be suitable for broadcast, not because there's swear words, just because people would misinterpret what's being said. Right. So you do have to be a bit careful, and if you are going to broadcast it, it would kind of sanitize those conversations a little bit. So it's some pluses, some negatives, but we're going to be working on that. We do speak to other federations all the time. We were consulted by the Premier League when they implemented their VAR project. We have really good connections with the German Federation and the Danish Federation as well. We've got an agreement in place where we share information with those guys. So we're trying to learn off the best. We're trying to share our experiences as well. We've been pretty successful with VAR, but make no mistake, it's far more simple here than it is, for example, somewhere in the Premier League. We've got an audience who are much more accustomed to the use of video replays in sport anyway. We've got far less tradition in our soccer community. It's a young sport here in terms of the professional game. And therefore, we're still growing it, we're still developing it, we're still building it as we go. Whereas over there, it's been established for a long time, and any changes are met with resistance. I can tell you from personal experience. So it's been more straightforward, more simple from our side. And we think it's a big advantage to have it. We do. We think that going into big games without it is. I look back on some of the games I spoke about when I was last with you in Feb. Going into those games without any form of VAR sort of like security makes me wonder how we did it. But I'm fearful a little bit. I'm a little bit fearful that some of the skills that we use to deliver those sort of games, usually successfully, are maybe blunted a little bit by having VAR. If you rely on it, you've got to put it out of your mind and referee the game properly, and then only use VAR should there be a situation that you get wrong because you had no choice but to make the call that you did from where you were, or because you couldn't get a position. I made loads of errors. I would love VAR, but I also delivered a lot of big games in a really good way without VAR. So you don't need it all the time. It needs to be there as an insurance policy when it's really needed.
Right. Well, good evening, everyone that's online. This is the opportunity to open your mic up and ask Mr. Webb any question referring back to the presentation he done a month ago. I know you've had time to think about some of the things that were discussed and you didn't get a chance to ask the question. There you go. And he's brought up some strong points this evening that you can relate to, or any question that you have. So over to you guys. Nobody?
Just while people are thinking about any questions, I'm going to just quickly share with you some of the things that we're going to talk to our officials about in MLS in the build-up to the new season. Some things that we think are important as some of the basics, again, because we're dealing with some real top-quality international referees, guys who have been to World Cups like Jai Marufo, guys who have refereed under-20 World Cup like Ismail Elfath. We've got a lot of officials have been around a long time, and we've got some new ones as well. But doing some of the basics are important, and when you've been away from the game for 3 months, like we have because of the off season, then it doesn't hurt to go back to some of the basics. So first of all, just some things that I've written down that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the teamwork credibility. We're going to be looking at how we can work as a team to enhance our credibility to reach best practice. When I say best practice, it doesn't mean just getting the decision right. It means how we get to that right decision. So, for example, when is it right for the assistant referee to flag, and when is it right for them not to flag? If there's a situation which is really clear under the nose of the assistant in good proximity, we expect to flag from the assistant, because even though communication might happen between the referee and the assistant, and the referee blows the whistle for an offence that's close to the assistant, if the assistant doesn't flag, the outcome is a sense among the players that the assistant referee and the referee aren't working together, that the assistant isn't in tune with the game. So we've been looking at the right times for the AR to intervene visually to enhance credibility. We've been talking a lot about, and we will be, about positioning in and around the penalty area. So as a top referee, your career is defined mainly by those decisions that you make around the penalty area. When I look back at my 297 Premier League games, I can tell you that probably a quarter of those had controversy around the penalty area. Penalties given or not given, sometimes right, sometimes not, but talking points around penalty situations. It's really crucial that your focus is so sharp in those areas and that you give yourself the best chance to be accurate. So working around the top of the penalty area. When I started, we ran a pretty strict diagonal. We didn't tend to deviate to the right. Those days have gone. That ability to deviate right when you need to, but understanding when it's right not to do that as well is really important. Having the physical ability, both in terms of physical endurance and agility, to be able to make those sharp moves around the top of the penalty area that can just give you those degrees of angle of view that can give you the answer. Because as I've said many times, when I show you a video clip of a penalty situation, you probably don't know the answer until you see the angle that gives you the best view. And then everybody says, of course it's a penalty, or of course it's not a penalty. But that's because you get the best optimal angle from the best TV camera. Now, it's not always possible to get that TV camera angle, but you can give yourself the best chance in real time by being a good understander of the game, a good reader of the game, anticipating where the play's going to go, and having the ability to get there, and then having the desire to get there. if any of those three things don't happen, you're not going to get to the best position that's available. So if you don't read the game quickly, you're not going to have time to get the best position. If you don't have the physical ability to get there, you're not going to be able to get there. And if you don't have the will and desire to get there because you're a lazy ref, then you just won't get there anyway. So really important that you've got those three things. But a lot of work around the top of the penalty area to open up those angles and not going into the penalty area unless you really need to. I'm a big believer that there's no reason, in my opinion, for the referee to be inside the penalty area when the play is live. I don't know if anybody saw the situation that we saw in Mexico. Did you see the situation from 10 days ago where the referee was following a breakaway? The Mexican team hit the post on an open goal. The referee continued his run into the penalty area. The ball went behind him and it was hit against him and he blocked the ball from going into the goal. It went wide. There's no need to be there. You need to be around the edge of the penalty area with lots and lots of opportunities to take a position that's out of the way of play. You can still get those angles. It's the angles, not the proximity, that's important. So maintain your position outside the penalty area, adjust your angles, and only move in once you've given the decision. That's the time to be there. That's the time to get in there and sell that decision that you've had to make. When I say sell the decision, it doesn't mean giving a penalty and running to the penalty spot. For those of you who are FIFA officials working in CONCACAF, you'll know that's a big no-no. They don't want you standing on the penalty spot when you give a penalty. I've got a nice clip of Anthony Taylor from the Premier League, but in a Champions League game, giving a penalty, running to the spot and being surrounded like a magnet. Take a neutral position away from the spot. And if the players want to come to you, you can deal with them much more easily when they're coming distance towards you than suddenly you being the focal point in the middle of the field near to where the players were anyway. So find that space, move away, and only move into that space once you've made the decision, whether it be a corner, goal kick, penalty. Don't get in there unless it's an exceptional circumstance where you feel there's a need. But generally speaking, stay outside the penalty area in live play. Management of free kicks. And this ties into what we saw at the weekend at West Brom. A quick free kick is a quick free kick. Yeah, and the team has got every right to take a quick free kick, provided it's in the right place, the ball is stationary, then absolutely they're the offended team. So once you see an offence, you blow the whistle, you move in without going in at 100 miles an hour. You don't need to. Sometimes you can bring flames to the situation if you do that, but give the free kick and then move towards it. But by the time you've got there, if the team haven't taken the option to take a quick free kick, take control. Really take control. Don't create doubt. Don't create opportunities for players to undermine your authority by not taking control. So move in. Once you let them take the kick quickly, but if they haven't, then hit the whistle and say, okay, guys, it's now on the whistle. It's on the whistle. Make it clear to the attacking team, the player who stood over the ball, anybody else who's nearby who could be taking the ball, okay, it's on the whistle. Make your body language really big and strong. Take control at that stage. People say the best referees are the ones that you don't notice, the ones that you don't see. That's true, but that doesn't mean, that's only if the game allows you to be that way. That doesn't mean that you can't be a big character on the field. You have to be a big personality. You have to be the biggest personality on some occasions. So take control. Guys, it's on the whistle, okay? Are we all clear? Everybody can see we're waiting on the whistle. Once you've done that, there's an expectation the kick doesn't go quick. The defenders know that they are safe at that point. They are safe to focus on where they need to position themselves without the fear that that ball is going to come in. Because as soon as you start pacing the wall back, you're controlling those defenders. Those defenders are doing what you're asking them to do, so their focus is on you. So you position the wall with the goalkeeper. Nothing happens. Nothing happens until you then take your position. Take your position and blow the whistle. And, at the end of the day, if you look back to what happened at West Brom at the weekend, Brighton had a nice attacking opportunity from a good positioned free kick, right? Nothing was going to change that. They were always going to have that free kick. So when Lewis Dunk, the guy from Brighton, said to the referee Lee Mason, who'd already set the wall up, the wall was being set up at that time, can I go quickly? Of course, the correct answer is no, we're not ready yet. Wait for the whistle. For some reason, and really bizarrely for an experienced referee of something like 16 years in the Premier League, who I know well, he just had a mind fart, and he just thought, yeah, why not? And he hit the whistle. Look, Dunk took the kick, and then he realised that the keeper was way out of position. How can you, as a referee, possibly come out of that in front? How can any of that enhance your authority or your credibility? All you're doing is taking a pin out of a hand grenade and putting it down your pants. All you can ever do is lose control at that point. Don't do anything. Don't self-destruct in this way. If he'd have said to Lewis Dunk, the guy from Brighton, Lewis, you've still got your free kick. Wait for the whistle. Yep. Okay. It's on the whistle. Keeper, you're ready. I'm ready. He's still got this wonderful free kick that they practice week in, week out on the training ground to score from. He's lost nothing. All he did is just commit suicide by doing what he did, and then he panicked and what have you. So quick free kicks are allowed. Allow them to take them in the proper way. Move there, because you've got to move there to manage it. But once you're there, take control. In my opinion, people might have different views. It's my personal opinion. You can't have a quick free kick after 8 seconds or 9 seconds or 10 seconds. A quick free kick is within 3 or 4 or 5 seconds maximum. Because once you're there, take control. Really, the attacking team have still got their kick, so do it. Personality, calmness, using a calmness. I was speaking to my missus the other day, who used to referee in the Bundesliga. We're talking about calmness, how the top elite referees give this air of calmness. Doesn't mean that the game passes you by. It doesn't mean that you look like you don't care. It just means that you have this quiet confidence about you that radiates to the players, and the players will respond in kind. I know sometimes, guys, that the players aren't easy. I hear about challenging players that we see from Latin America and from Central America and from the Caribbean and from Europe and from Africa. The players all over the world have got some challenging aspects that they bring to the game that they create pressure on the referee with. But the one thing that tends to work across the world is that calmness and that ability as a referee to fluctuate a little bit, calm, but then show steel when you need to. Identify the moments when you really need to show that you're the boss. So in those areas around, and I know in the CONCACAF world, they call it the free zone, that area around the penalty area, the technical area, where things can happen quickly, and you've got the added issue of being close to the technical area, where there is, high chance of a reaction from a coach, which can then rub off on the players. There's going to be more histrionics, more theatre in that part of the field. So that's where the referee needs to be the boss. That's where you can show everybody that you're in charge. But still with that air of calmness. I watched a game today. I watched a second Bundesliga game from Hamburg, St. Pauli against Hamburg. And the referee was asked to go to look at the screen for a video review for violent conduct. A player had kicked another player, and he had kicked the player, but the referee had not seen it. It was kind of like off the ball, and the referee goes to the screen, looks and sees, yes, I'm going to have to send the player off. He came back onto the field, did the TV screen. This was Dennis Eitikin, the guy I talked about. Instead of going straight for the red card and going bang, he pulled the player to him and he spoke to him for about 15 seconds and described what he'd seen and why he had no option but to do what he was about to do. He was almost saying, look, you've kind of put me in a position here because I don't really ever want to send you off, but have you seen what I've seen on the screen? I've seen you kick him. And he does it in a really calm and calculated way. And by the time he pulls the red card out, the player just sort of like accepts it and walks off. If it had gone bang, the player would have gone, I think there'd have been a big reaction to the ref, there'd have been a reaction to the opponent. But because the referee, a really experienced referee, had gone out there and taken the time to say, okay, let me explain what I've seen and what I'm going to do, it meant that when he did it, in the end, the reaction was one of acceptance rather than one of aggression or a rejection. So calmness, but understanding when you've got to show that you're the boss. And the big thing I learned, guys, from my career as an English ref who likes to speak a lot, all referees in England like to go blah, blah, blah. I think I mentioned this last time I spoke. I mean, my first ever UEFA assessment was from a German observer. And I'd refereed this under-19s game down in Madrid between Spain and Portugal. I thought I'd done a really good job, speaking to the players, managing them. I had a couple of cautions, but by and large, it seemed pretty well under control. And the assessor came into the locker room after the game, and I thought he was going to say, bravo, congratulations. And he looked at me, and he just said, you're a typical British referee. Blah, 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 blah. He said, yellow is yellow, red is red, finish. And that was it. And he walked out. And I was deflated. I thought, oh my goodness. And then he spoke to me later. And looking back now, I know exactly what he means, because when I watched videos of me refereeing in the early 2000s, every decision I was explaining to the players, every decision, it was like, let's have a little chat. You don't need to talk about every decision. You really don't. Less is more in terms of that. Your body language way trumps, in my opinion. It trumps words. Your body language absolutely is the thing that gets the acceptance and the respect of the players rather than words. Yes, you can supplement it with words that are used, but we have referees on the MLS who come through, and I can listen to them on a listening device, and they want to speak to the players all the time. But the thing it does, it gets on the players' nerves, and it gives an impression of nervousness. It gives an impression, I think, that you're not as confident as you might be trying to appear. In that first year in UEFA, not only did I have that experience in Madrid with that German observer, but I remember I had a couple of games where there was confrontation in the game. And our top referee in England at the time was Graham Paul. And Graham, you'll remember, went to the World Cup in Germany. He had a difficult situation with the 3 yellow cards, which is a real shame because he was a good ref and he had a good eye for the game. And he said to me after that year, he said, I want a word. He said, you're trying to convince players with every decision. You're trying to get them every single decision to see it your way. He said, and they don't believe you. It looks like you're trying to convince yourself. He said, stop talking to the players so often. So it's true. So understanding when it's right to have those quiet words with players and when it's right to be the boss on a big decision, make your body language big, good strong signals, not aggression in your face, but confidence in your face, and let them know that you've got that confidence. It's coming out from you, but you're not there to debate the decision. You're not. And you're calm, but you're showing that you're confident and clear in your mind.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We talk about the VAR and on the touchline side. Has there been any thought of moving it from the technical area as you're going into what is called the lion's den of the coaches and everybody there, where in the other sports that use the technology have an area where the referee goes to where he's uninterrupted, unconfrontational with anyone other than the people that are on the field?
That's a really good question, Neil. And you know something? I'm not well positioned to answer it because in the MLS we don't put the screen in the technical area. Our screen is on the far side from the technical area. In most competitions, it is in the technical area. I was surprised, I'll be honest, when I saw that. Like you, I thought you're going into the lion's den there. So we put it on the far side, or some stadiums like at Portland, for example, in Oregon, it's behind both goals. Now, the issue with it being behind the goals is that usually that's where the supporters section are, the fans with the most aggression. And we have had situations once in Atlanta and also in Houston where things were getting thrown from the stand, from the ultras, if you like, towards the review area. So it's not ideal there either. I think the reason why they put it in the technical area is because there's a lot of security around the area. You don't normally get the idiot fans in that area so much. And I've not seen any situations where coaches have really made a problem. So the fears that I had and that you've expressed, I don't think are probably valid fears based on what I've seen, but we had the same view. And next year in MLS, we will still be keeping them usually on the far side of the technical area. That's where our people go to look at the screen. There are some that are still behind goals, but they're not in the technical area for the reasons that you expressed and that we feared. But I think from what I've seen, it's not been a problem so far in most competitions. I've got 2 more points on here, but any other questions on VAR while we're on it? Because it's such a topical issue. I mean, every time I don't look at Twitter so much, but every time I read anything, it tends to be about VAR, and it's getting a lot of. So, for example, the situation at West Brom. For those who didn't see it, was I mentioned a quickly taken free kick that should have been a ceremonial one, but VAR got a lot of criticism for that, and it wasn't about VAR. It was about good, basic officiating. That's the foundation of refereeing. It's, and VAR ended up mopping up the mess, but it wasn't about VAR. It was just about basic refereeing.
I think the other major talking point from the weekend was the Chelsea Manchester United issue, handball in the box or non-handball in the box, was looked at so many different angles and so forth. And that's still a conversation that goes on today, because even Manchester United's coach has criticized the decision, because obviously it
Yeah.
didn't go his favor. So, it's just one of those things where there's a lot of talking points with it and without it.
It was so everybody on the call will have their own view on that particular situation. Not because I'm in any way a Manchester United fan, but the way that, as you know from last time, the way the laws are written at the moment, in our opinion here at Pro, that is a penalty kick. That is a penalty kick. And it might seem harsh. It might seem harsh. 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been given. But in this drive for consistency around handball under the laws of the game, certain type of situations were captured within the language that have to be penalised. Mm-hmm. So one of them says, if your arm is extended away from your body, above the shoulder, then it's a penalty kick. That is what happened. Now, you talked about, was he nudged into it or that type of thing, whatever. I don't see that. I see his arm being out there. Maybe he's trying to fend off the player, but if he makes contact with the ball, yes, it's harsh. I agree with you. I'm an old traditionalist who thinks that really, for a penalty to be given, somebody should catch it, pat it in the air, bounce it down, and then punch it away. I wasn't somebody who would like to give a lot of penalties for handball in the way that a lot of other countries did. I mean, the Spanish were giving handball penalties all the time. But as the way the law's written now, in our opinion here, it should have been given as a penalty. Now, without VAR, I can absolutely see why that wouldn't be given in the moment, trying to make an assessment. Once the VAR's seen it, he sees what we've seen, as per the laws of the game, as they're written right now, and he recommends a review. So we think the referee should have given it. What is a good learning point there, though, is Stuart Atwell was the ref. Now, I understand that Stuart came back onto the field and said to one of the players, it would have been too controversial to give it. Always be careful what you say as a ref, because people will misinterpret what you're trying to say. Because Stuart probably just meant it wasn't clear for him. But because he said that, now Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has interpreted that as, well, he's saying that because there's been so much stuff in the media about penalties given to Manchester United that's got into his head, and he's now thinking, I can't give them another one. So he's saying the reason he didn't give the penalty is not because it wasn't one or there wasn't an offence, it's because it would have been too much like fulfilling of the narrative that he's heard. So be careful what you say. That's a lesson from that situation there, I would say. But again, in my opinion, I think it should be a penalty. The physical characteristics are consistent with what's written up in the laws of the game as an offence for handball.
Okay. Any questions?
Good evening, Mr. Webb.
Yeah.
Quick question. As a non-Man United supporter here,
me or you?
in your experience refereeing in the Premier League, which game do you remember for all the wrong reasons, and what did you learn most from it?
Oh, that's thank you. Is that Sean? Yeah, easy question for me. The game I remember the most for all the wrong reasons, and there was quite a few. I mean, I did 297 across 11 years, and there were some great experiences, and most of them were. There was a small handful, maybe about 10 of those that were really challenging. The most challenging of all was game number 13. It was in my second year, October 2004. It was a game that was played at Goodison Park, where there's been a game tonight, actually. Everton against Bolton Wanderers. It's the only Premier League game that I really lost control of. And I lost control for a very simple reason. Everton in 2004 had a lot of, they were being managed by David Moyes, who then went to Manchester United, then is now at West Ham. They had a lot of really experienced old heads in their team, a lot of strong, physical, experienced players. And they were playing Bolton Wanderers, who was being managed by Sam Allardyce. Sam's now at West Brom, went to England for a couple of days. And then they also had some pretty experienced players, physical as well. So when you put those two teams together, it's a challenging game, particularly for a young referee on his second year in the Premier League, on top of which it's been played at Goodison Park, 45,000 people, not a seat available, sell out as you'd expect, and it's a pretty a pretty tight stadium. All the fans are really close, and they're really partisan. They are really, really biased. All fans are biased, aren't they? Of course, they need to be. But Everton fans would, you could give the most clear foul against Everton, and they would react with a barrage of, boos and abuse. So a tough place to go. Where as a ref and as a visiting player, you had to be mentally strong. You had to be mentally strong. And I was found wanting. In the first 20 minutes, I was given the decisions in the game, quite a high energy game. I was given the fouls I saw that I thought I needed to give. And sometimes that was penalising Everton, and I was getting reaction from the fans. And a couple of decisions, 2 or 3 or 4 decisions went against Everton consecutively. And this created this increase of animosity from the stand, and that was rubbing off on the players, and that was rubbing off on me. And every time I was blowing the whistle, it seemed to be getting worse. It seemed to be creating more sort of like aggression in the stadium. So after about 25 minutes, I did the worst thing you can do as a ref. I started to hit the whistle less. I started to let things go that I wasn't letting go in the first 20 minutes. I started to hide. Because every time I was blowing the whistle, it was quite challenging. I started to do it less, and I lost my self-belief. I thought, maybe I'm having one of those days. Maybe I'm seeing too much. And I started to let things go. And instead of calming things down, it did the complete opposite. The tempo just went boom, 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 boom. When the game gets hard, that's the time to blow the whistle more. That's the time to grab it with the balls and pull it in. A really, really good analogy that was given to me by and I don't know if I shared it last time, by my mentor in UEFA, a guy called Hugh Dallas from Scotland, right? So Hugh was assigned to me in 2005 when I first got onto the FIFA list. I was a UEFA talent, and he just finished refereeing himself, went to the World Cup a couple of times. And he said to me, he said an analogy for game control. He said when you're refereeing, it's a bit like riding a horse. He said, when you get on a horse, you don't know the nature of that horse. So the best thing to do when you get onto the back of the horse is to get hold of the reins and just keep them quite tight. Don't strangle the horse, but don't leave them too loose. Just keep them so you've got a good feel of them, so you've got a good grasp of them. And then start moving. And if the horse is nice and calm, you can let the reins go. You can just let it feed through your hands a little bit, because you know that the horse is compliant. If you keep the reins too tight on a compliant horse, you're probably going to start to annoy the horse, and the horse will start to become non-compliant. So go with it by letting the reins out, but just keep them tight enough so that if the horse sees something it doesn't like and starts to rear up, you can easily pull it back. But don't pull it back for too long, because once you've got the horse back under control, you need to let it go again. Otherwise, it's going to continue to be difficult. And that's exactly the same with a game of football. And the analogy of the reins is just really the amount of intervention you have as a ref with a whistle. Pulling the reins in on the horse means just hitting the whistle more. It means putting your foot on the ball. It means when you give a free kick, you don't allow a quick one. It means that you take a second to calm things down. Let everybody get a bit of oxygen. Take a breath. Put your foot on the ball. Restart the game in your time. Don't allow advantage when the tempo's high, unless it's an absolute humdinger where they're about to score. Otherwise, you'll really piss people off. But just think of that analogy. And the what I did, that was a difficult horse. But what I did, I let go of the reins. I just let go of them, and the horse just went crazy. And the game was so difficult. And about 40 minutes in, the captain Gary Speed, I think I did mention this last time. He was the captain of Wales as well. He really sadly committed suicide in 2011. Really strange situation. But anyway, a good player, a good guy. And he said to me, "You're starting to let us down. You're letting us down." I said, "Oh, don't be silly." But I knew what he meant, because I wasn't doing the job I meant to do. I'd been sent there to do. The game was difficult all the way through. Lost control toward the end. Sam Allardyce ridiculed me on Match of the Day on the BBC that night. And so I looked at that clip. I looked at that game the following week. I met my coach and we went through it. It took about 3 hours, looked at every situation. And for the first 20 minutes, I wasn't perfect, but I had the game pretty much under control. If I had just kept my self-belief and kept blowing the whistle, more, not less, and then recognising when it was calmed down again, just let the whistle go a bit, I'd have got through the game in much better shape than I did. It was a shit show, shall I say. It was a really poor game. I got the worst ever mark ever from an assessor in the Premier League. And I learnt a lot because in many other games where you went through one of those difficult games, difficult spell in a game, or the game starts difficult, I thought back to that game and thought, don't lose control, don't start to hide. And everyone on this call who's still refereeing will have those games where, it's just not quite falling into place. It doesn't feel to be coming easily. Sometimes the ball's huge, you see it all. Sometimes you're searching for decisions. Sometimes because the situations are difficult to identify because they're just tricky situations. Sometimes you're just not in good form. Sometimes you just don't have a good run of form yourself, like a player. And when you're in that situation, you just got to keep running through it. You've got to keep doing the basics right. Keep blowing the whistle when you should do. Keep those reins tight when you need to, and keep the other basics that serve you well, the fitness levels, the knowledge of the laws of the game, the teamwork, all those basics that can always be there, even if you're not seeing things instinctively as well as other times. So, Sean, that was the hardest game ever. That was for all the wrong reasons. I've got to just flip that a little bit because we love doing what we do, and most times it's good. The best game ever, and I saw it on a classics on TV the other day, was Liverpool-Arsenal. I think in 2009 or 11, and it finished 4-4 at Anfield. A Russian player playing for Arsenal called Andrei Arshavin. Arshavin scored all 4 goals for Arsenal that night. I gave 8 free kicks. I cautioned Emmanuel Eboué for Arsenal for one of those 8 free kicks. But other than that, nothing to do. I was privileged to have the best seat in the house at Anfield under lights for a 4-4 game between Liverpool and Arsenal. Really lucky guy to be involved in things like that. So, painful at Everton, but a pleasure at Liverpool on that particular night.
Tashawn, you had a question?
Yeah. Good evening. I have a question revolving Man United and the penalties and stuff like that. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk on social media about Fresh United having all these penalties, and then since Klopp made a comment of United getting all these penalties, you've seen less, and some that I would personally agree that there should have been penalties. So as a person who was a part of the PGMOL, do they look at stuff like that? Like, do they look at how people are talking about how many decisions are being made, whether correctly or incorrectly, and then they change the way how they make a decision for a specific team?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. Most things that are said by coaches like that are done with the intention of trying to create an impact, a psychological impact, a subconscious impact. People operating at that level of sport understand how these things work. That's why sometimes you'd come off a game at half time. There's been a big decision in the first half. These are the days before VAR particularly. And, you'd come back out for the second half. And one of the coaches or the players would say, have you seen that penalty appeal from the first half? Have you seen it at half time? Or have you seen the tackle? And you'd say, no, because we didn't have a TV screen in our locker room. Then they would say, well, we've seen it, and it's you will be embarrassed. When you see the TV later, you'll be embarrassed by your decision not to give us a penalty. All they're trying to do is influence you to give them the decision in the second half. A number of times that would happen where they would tell you things that weren't true at half time, trying to influence you in the second half. You'd then see it later on yourself, and you'd see that they were talking nonsense. They were just trying to get that decision. I would say to referees all the time, new referees in the Premier League, don't believe what you're told until you see it with your own eyes, because people will play games with you. That also happens in interviews, in press conferences, that type of thing. When Klopp says about penalties for Man U, is hoping that might have some sort of an effect. As referees, you have to do your best. Not easy once you've seen something. You have to do your best to put it out of your head. You have to do your best to not go searching for that type of information. Sometimes it finds you. I mentioned last time I was on the call about the game that I did in the World Cup between Brazil and Chile, and how the comments of the two coaches have been forwarded to me by somebody. I didn't go searching the internet to find out what was being said about the coach of Chile saying the only way we can win the game is if the referee isn't biased towards Brazil. In Brazil, it's going to be difficult for the referee not to be biased to Brazil, but we can't win if the referee isn't strong enough. All that type of nonsense. So they're the things that do find their way to your ear, and it's difficult to put it out of your mind then. But as a professional, you've got to do that. You've got to do what you can to just shut all of that noise out. The actual organisation will respond to official complaints or official observations. So if a club says, we feel that we're getting the short end of the stick here, we feel we've had so many penalties missed, not given to us, then the organisation will investigate whether there's any merit in that, and we do that. So if a club contacts me and says, we're not getting our fair share of big decisions, I'll go to the club, I'll meet with them when we can, and we'll go through clips and we'll talk to them, and I'll hold my hands up and say, I acknowledge that you've not been given penalties that you should have been given. We even compare stats. So we'll say, okay, out of all of the clubs in the league, you've had the most KMI incorrect decisions go against you. And what can you do about it? All you can do is, for a period of time, you can maybe assign experienced officials to those games to try to ensure that the games are, controlled more smoothly. You don't put rookies in there who are maybe more likely to make a mistake, that type of thing. You keep the lines of communication open with the club. That there's not going to be one club that's always going to be bottom of the table. Somebody's always going to have to be in that position in terms of the number of KMI errors, key match incident errors that go against them. But you just hope it fluctuates and changes over time. But yeah, the noise that's made is for a purpose, and as a referee, you've got to try and block it out, do your job. And to the point made earlier, if you are aware of it, don't reference it when you're making decisions, because that is clearly something that backfires like it did at the weekend with what Stuart seems to have said, obviously I don't know, but seems to have said to, I think, Luke Shaw around, the handball being too controversial if it had given it, and then other things can be read into it.